corners. The veterans use the track to win. For the rookies, it will be a long day at IndyCar school. Take Alex Zanardi on the pole in Rio, or Greg Moore, who led for 28 laps at Rio. Is it a rookie's day to win and find paradise in Australia? Are on the track, down under at Surfers Paradise for the Australian IndyCar Grand Prix. Blue skies overhead, a nice ocean breeze, warm temperatures, and this is the main event after a week-long festival here in Surfers Paradise. Well, this IndyCar Championship fight is very close. As we came here for qualifying, Scott Pruitt had 26 points, leading the championship by a single point.
Yeah, but Jimmy Vasser yesterday in the last few minutes of qualifying posts a really quick lap, steals the pole, gets the 1 point, and he ties the championship, and he and Scott Pruitt are starting on the front row.
In the second row, Alex Zanardi. Remember, he led the most laps at Rio and started on the pole, but he's an ex-Formula One driver, a road racer, and this is the first road circuit of the season.
Over the last couple of days, though, I've been talking to the guys. What they're all concerned about is coming away from Australia with a couple of points. And that championship, they don't want it to slip away.
And speaking of guys who need points, what about former winners here, Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti? Between them, they share 6 points. All in all, it will make for a very interesting afternoon here at Surfers as the IndyCars run the straights that parallel the Pacific Ocean. Now let's take a look at the starting grid here in the first row on the pole is Jimmy Vasser. His first career pole comes with a new track record. Alongside is Scott Pruitt, making his first career start from the front row. In the second row, Alex Zanardi, the leading rookie contender, and Paul Tracy, the defending champion at Surfers Paradise. In row 3, Michael Andretti, who won here in '94, and Christian Fittipaldi, Michael's teammate, with his first top 10 start of the year. In row 4, Parker Johnstone, who crashed during the morning warm-up session, but they've got the car back together and ready to go. And Greg Moore. He led late in the race at Rio until his engine failed. In the 5th row, Andre Ribeiro earned his second career win before his countryman at Rio. And Adrian Fernandez, who starts alongside his teammate. The 6th row, Mauricio Guzman, who finished 4th here last year. And Gil de Ferret, who has 2 top 10 finishes this season. In the 7th row, Bobby Rahal has second place finishes here, 2 of them, 1 of them last year. And Robbie Gordon. In the 8th row, Raul Boesel and Al Unser Jr. The 9th row, Brian Herta and Emerson Fittipaldi, the '92 winner here. The 10th row, Roberto Moreno and Stefan Johansson. In the 11th row, Carlos Guerrero and Eddie Lawson. The 12th row, Juan Fangio and Jeff Krosnoff. And alone in the 13th row, Hiro Matsushita. Now, Jack Arute, this is a temporary road circuit, and that puts a premium on the technical aspects.
Paul, it is brutal on the cars. Consider these facts. You're up and down through the gearbox 30 times a lap. You're on the brakes 10 times a lap, 5 times real hard. But the big story this weekend so far has been the emergence of Firestone. They've proven that they have an excellent oval track tire. They've brought a brand new road racing tire here, and it is very quick. In fact, one of the Goodyear drivers, Paul Tracy, says the Firestones account for an advantage of over 3 seconds a lap. Now joining us today is a former IndyCar driver, Jan Beekes.
Jack, the crews, when they came here for this first street circuit of 1996, trying to find the setup, they had to keep the driving style in mind. You see, some drivers here love to pound across the curbs and the chicanes to save just a little bit of distance. Other drivers choose to miss those curbs entirely. Now, we know that Michael Andretti, he's one of those drivers that loves to fly spectacularly through some of those chicanes. Now, his crew is hoping that for 65 laps, both he and his car will be able to take that kind of punishment. Paul?
All right, the track here is very long, very exciting.
Well, this track is 2.8 miles in length. It's got a lot of straightaways, a lot of tight corners, and a lot of chicanes. And with that comes a lot of curbs, and you're going to see these guys jumping over the curbs and the chicanes and in some of the corners. It's a very physical track.
Here's the field breakdown of chassis, engines, and tires. Chassis led by Renard. Of course, those combinations so very important. Stories here today that we're looking at, winning combination. The Reynard Firestone Honda combination seems to be very powerful. What about the rookies here today? Remember that both Nigel Mansell and John Andretti scored their first ever victories at this track. Can the rookies do as well? Championship points fight. We've already said that it's very close. And the toll of the track. Danny points out it's a rough circuit. It can beat up a race car and a driver very quickly. And of course, those concrete walls right alongside the edge of the track all the way. So we are getting set to go racing right now. There are the two participants in the front row. The tie in the championship, Vassar and Pruitt. And the crowd here is really magnificent. It's built every year. This has to be the largest crowd ever. And with the beautiful weather we've had here, it's just been a continuation of what they have called Indy Carnival. So here now they make the final turn. This should put them onto the pit straight and into alignment, and we should be ready to go. That's the final turn. The pit straight lies ahead. Look at that crowd.
Well, they're way out there in front like that. I don't know if we're going to get a green on this one.
No, not at all.
He's jumped that.
Getting into alignment right after that turn is difficult, and Jimmy jumped way ahead.
Sometimes they do that on purpose. If fuel is a factor, which I'm not sure it is here, they'll jump it so they can have one slow lap, because now that the clock has started, they've started that as a race. They count that lap even though it's yellow.
We're going to listen in today, and as Danny says, this lap does in fact count. We're going to be listening in today to a couple of the radios. Most notably at the moment, we've opened up the frequency to Jimmy Vassar, and we'll just listen to him and see what he may be saying, if anything, or if, as Danny suggests, that's part of the whole tactics of this thing. Same time, we're also monitoring the frequency of Scott Pruitt. Scott's be talking with their team manager for Patrick Racing, Jim McGee. Vassar
Scott, they want you to stay right up with Vassar if you can on the next time.
Took a big jump right at the start.
Okay.
So that's Jim McGee and Scott Pruitt talking.
And I'd like to say something about that. It's Jimmy obviously wants to get the jump. The start's very critical here. But when you see him come out of that last corner, it's very tight back there, and it's hard to time when everybody is through that corner and lined up in the proper order. And I think he just wanted to get a little bit of jump down there. Of course, we go down that straightaway. We've got a little bit of a bend to the right hand, and then you brake hard into a left-hander. And, of course, he's chosen the inside, so he doesn't want to lose any ground down there.
In IndyCar racing on the road course, the pole sitter has his choice of where he wants to start, right or left-hand side, and Jimmy Vassar has chosen what is the inside to the first set of corners here. 161 cubic inch turbocharged engines, 1,550 pounds. These Indy cars, 13 rows.
10-4. 10-4.
Tom Anderson talking with Jimmy Vassar. So this lap does count. Danny Sullivan suggests it might in fact be a tactic to help lengthen out the fuel here today. Certainly weather will not be a factor, except it will add to the enjoyment of everyone here because it is absolutely beautiful here on the Gold Coast. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
One of the things that you just mentioned was exactly what went through my mind, and that is that many of these drivers may have jumped the start on purpose. They're very concerned about fuel here, and it wouldn't hurt them just to have one wave off. It'll save them quite a bit of fuel doing one more slow lap.
There you get an idea of how this circuit winds in and out of the luxury condominiums and hotels here. Now are we going to get a start? They come into the rows of two as they come off the corner. Vassar stays back. The rest of the field crowds up on him.
Boy, they're bundled up there, and they're going slow. Here he goes. He's jumped it a little bit there. Good start for Jimmy.
And green flag is out. From Jim Swintel as they head down. Start jamming down the gears and brakes into the first set of corners at a chicane. Very tight maneuvering through here. Vassar has the lead, followed by Pruitt.
One thing we saw in practice this morning is everybody's very conscious of that first lap. They don't want to knock a nose off. In fact, a lot of the teams were down there practicing changing noses just for that reason.
Paul Tracy has jumped up and challenged for third. He's gotten around Alex Zanardi. And so Paul Tracy moves into third place. Zanardi is fourth. Here they come along, paralleling the Pacific.
See, Paul Tracy's jumped up into third spot there.
Michael Andretti has moved up as well. That yellow and red car, of course, at the front is Jimmy Vasser, followed by the white, red, and blue. The colors for Scott Pruitt as Scott tucks his nose in, looks for some room.
Scott's really pushing him there. He's all over him on this first lap.
Keeping track of Scott Pruitt on the two-way radios with his car. And coming to the conclusion of the first lap of racing, but the second lap of the run.
Look at the fuel, Scott. 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock on the fuel. That's a mapping setting?
That's a mapping setting for his fuel mixture. And what that means is they'll start it probably at 100%. So he's got the full amount of fuel for the start, and then they'll start turning it down a little bit as the field settles down. But you can see he's right there with Jimmy Vasser.
Call coming in from Pruitt, just because we can't receive it.
9 o'clock on the fuel, Scott. 9 o'clock. The valve's open, too.
Valve's open. They can see that the valve on the turbocharger is.
Well, they've got the telemetry in the pit, so it sends a signal back to the pit. And what they're saying is you're just bleeding that valve off just a little bit. You're up there just a little bit. Turn it down, because once that dumps off, you lose so much ground. And on the fuel, they're trying to get it down so that he's a little bit more conservative so he can go the distance.
9 o'clock on the fuel, Scott. 9 o'clock.
He keeps telling him, which obviously means that Scott hadn't turned it down. I think Scott's busy here. He doesn't want to lose any ground to Jimmy.
Let's go to the pits, Jack.
Well, Paul, you talk about the telemetry now. Pit road, the wall is just about up here. But what happens is back here is another row. That's where all the telemetry is. And on a computer readout is everything that the driver would see on the dash as well. So what they're able to do is actually tell the performance, Danny, as you said, of the engine, and specifically how the valve is operating. No longer does a driver have to listen to hear it pop off. Actually, the telemetry will tell you.
Well, that's right, Jack. And one of the other things, too, is that they don't want to be looking at the dash too much right now. They're trying to focus on what's going on in that car and around them. If they take their eyes off and look at that dash too much, they're liable to clip a wall. So they're really focusing, especially in these early laps right now, on that car in front of them or what they're doing.
So Jimmy Vasser jumps into the lead at the start from the pole, followed by Scott Pruitt, Paul Tracy, Alex Zanardi, Michael Andretti, and Christian Fittipaldi. This is part of the No Fear Air Show that performed for the crowd right over the beach here just before the start of the race. Precision aerobatic flying. Back at Surfers Paradise, Australia, you ride with Jimmy Vasser, and it's gone away now, but it's still up there. He went through one of the chicanes here, and they have cones out, and he clipped one off. It's sitting right on his rollover bar. There it is, right in front of the camera now. Just pinned to it with his speed here. Oh, come on, Jimmy, get that out of the way.
That's kind of blocking our shot. You'd think he'd be nice enough and rip that thing off with his hand, but I'm sure he's not even aware it's up there.
Yeah, no factor to the car or its operation. As Jimmy Vasser continues his lead over Pruitt, Paul Tracy, Alex Zanardi, Michael Andretti, Christian Fittipaldi, Parker Johnstone, and Greg Moore. 4 laps are complete. First pit stops, if they run according to the game plan, should come sometime between the 17th and the 24th lap. Whoa. We've been seeing a lot of that this weekend, too. They're really pitching the cars.
Well, that's true. A lot of the guys want to have a stiffer setup, which means they throw it around a little bit like a go-kart. With these tight chicanes and tight corners, you got to have a car that's stiff and you can pitch it in, get it to turn very quickly so you can make the next turn just as quickly. And so we see that sliding around. The question, of course, is going to be whether that starts wearing out these tires, and nobody's run the soft Firestones that they're on right now a long distance. So we're going to have to see as that fuel load lightened if that becomes a factor.
Jimmy Vasser going over the curbs here a little bit, but being fairly careful about it. Two Californians out in front. Jimmy Vasser from San Francisco and Scott Pruitt from Granite Bay. Let's go take a look at Stefan Johansson. On board with Stefan now, and he runs down in 18th place. But this will give you a good idea of the circuit here.
And he obviously doesn't have a cone stuck in front of the camera. But you see him just touching those curbs, going over them just a little bit. That's pretty conservative. See how quick that wall comes up on the outside there. That's something you always got to be paying attention around here because the wall's not very far away. You make a little mistake, boom, you're in it.
A lot of bumps there. Emerson Fittipaldi in the pits, Jan.
Emerson Fittipaldi has brought his Penske machine in here. It looks like it appears to be some sort of electrical problem. They've taken the side pod cover off, which is generally where they keep all the electronics for the car and for the power plant. So at the moment, Emerson Fittipaldi waits, but's losing lots of time.
Go back to the front of the field, looking out the back of Jimmy Vasser's car. That's Pruitt in pursuit, and you can see they have pulled away from the third place car of Paul Tracy.
And of course, that's a little bit of an optical illusion. It looked like he closed up and then pulled out. That's unfortunately one of the cars closing under braking and the other one accelerating away.
So down the front stretch, as Jimmy Vasser continues to lead Scott Pruitt, Paul Tracy, Alex Zanardi, and Michael Andretti. Here at Surfers Paradise, most of the teams stay at the Marriott Surfers Paradise. Great hotel, beautiful big lobby, and lots of swimming facilities. The best news is, hit right across the street from the circuit. You can get up, have a cup of coffee, and walk to the track. Surfers Paradise, nothing changes at the top of the order. You're right on board with Christian Fittipaldi, who's looking ahead to try and chase down Michael, but we've just gone to a full course caution, and here is the reason. Parker Johnstone straight on into the barrier.
Yeah, he got caught up on the curbing earlier there and just couldn't turn, had to straighten it up, went into the barrier. Unfortunately, that's his second time today because he did it in the morning warm-up.
Fangio, Toyota Power on the Dan Gurney Eagle in the pits. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, Danny was talking before the break about the fact we're going to be watching the optional tire, specifically the Firestone optional tire. Now, here's why. Firestone brought a tire that was moderate in hardness and soft in hardness. The optional tire was the soft tire. That's what many of the front runners decided to qualify on. By the rules, you must continue and start the race on the same tires that you actually qualified on. During the first pit stop, they do have the option to change back to the harder compound. But let me show you how you can tell whether they're running the optional tire or the regular compound. It's a simple stamp like this. Each tire is stamped with the OP. That means it's an option. So during pit stops, we'll be looking to see if the new rubber that goes on the cars has an OP or not.
Well, under this full course caution, he's still on board with Jimmy Vasser, and that cone is...
a little bit.
We're trying to decipher the communications between Jimmy and the pit.
That might be disturbing his radio. Of course, you see one antenna out there just to the right of the cone by the right front tire. That's one of his antennas, probably for the telemetry if it's out there. But his radio is usually someplace on the nose, or it could be on that rollover bar and causing the interference.
So here on the first road course, our first temporary of the year, Jimmy Vasser has led right from the green flag. 11 laps into the record book. Under this full course caution, Paul Tracy was one of those that darted in and out of the pits. We're listening to Scott Pruitt's radio now. Emerson Fittipaldi, his problem continued. He took it out for a lap, came back in after changing the electric boxes, and then they changed the spark plugs, and we'll try to keep track of Emerson for you. Jack Arute?
Well, Parker Johnstone's made the long walk to pit road. What happened?
Well, I just got in a little too deep into the chicane and made a mistake, and it's really unfortunate because all of our good friends at Motorola back in the States really needed a good finish here, and I had an incident this morning. The guys at the Bricks Comtech team put a fabulous job putting the car back together, and it's just one of those things. We were trying to conserve fuel. I was down on boost and just made an error looking at something else when I shouldn't have been.
When you are down on boost and trying to conserve fuel, as a driver, does that mean you take more chances? What's the story?
Well, exactly. We dropped almost 4 inches of boost right at the green flag. We recovered a little bit of it, but we were still 2 inches down. And you try to overcompensate by getting into the corners deep under braking, by driving the car as hard as you possibly know how to make up for the straight line speed deficit. And that's the only place where I could hold on to Craig Moore and keep away from Adrian and the guys behind me. And I just got into the chicane just 3 inches too deep, clipped the curb, and put me in the wall.
Well, that's it for Parker Johnstone.
Yeah, tough luck for Parker. And Bobby Rahal gesturing to his pit as we run under a full course caution. Nobody else into the pit. Here in Australia, boy, there's the symbol animal of Australia, the kangaroo. Hi, how you doing? A marsupial, the little babies, they call it Joey. Is that great? We'll be back after this. And a word from our ABC stations.
The Australian Grand Prix continues.
We're back at Surfers Paradise, Australia, ready to go green once again. And the green flies at the start-finish line as Jimmy Vasser acknowledges it, begins his acceleration up to above 184 miles an hour. But Scott Pruitt is right there and beginning to charge once again. The whole field, of course, grouped up as a result of the yellow flag for Parker Johnstone. Back down the order, you see Paul Tracy sitting just behind in third place. Then Alex Zanardi, Michael Andretti.
Of course, right before that yellow, Jimmy was pulling out a little bit, and then it looked like Scott was closing up. I saw twice where Jimmy locked up a left front, and then I saw him bump up and hit the right rear against the wall. That might have slowed him up just a little bit, but he seems not to be that affected by it at the moment.
I think we had indicated that Paul Tracy had been in and out of the pits. That, in fact, was Al Unser Jr., his teammate. Tracy remains in third place. And look at him, boy, wise. They all come off that corner. Is it getting slicker, or is that the driving style?
Well, I don't think it's getting any slicker at this stage, but what happens on that first lap when you can't really warm up the tires as much as you'd like behind the pace car. So what happens is they start to get on it, they're accelerating, they're trying to get a little gap away. Tires aren't up to their optimum operating temperature, and so they're sliding around a little bit more.
All right, let's go pit side. Jan Beekes.
Paul, a couple of quick Penske updates. First of all, Emerson Fittipaldi, they're still working to try and cure that problem, have not found the solution. The second is that Al Unser Jr. chose during that yellow caution period to come in, take on a full load of fuel, or at least as much fuel as he needed to fill the tank, and 4 new tires. So already Penske trying some new strategy with Al Jr.
Well, I think one of the things he's trying is it's obvious that it's very difficult to pass here. Take Robbie Gordon. This morning he was second quickest, started 14th. He's only up to 10th. He can't do it. It's a very difficult course to pass a faster car on. Roger Penske's trying a little strategy. He's trying to think, well, maybe we can just get everybody out of step here. They've all got to pit under a green. We won't have to, and maybe we'll jump up some spots. Pass them in the pits.
14 laps now. The 65-lap scheduled distance here now complete. Tight at the front of the order. Though as yet, Scott Pruitt has not had a chance to really poke out and get into the fight. Michael Andretti sits in 4th place right now. We ride with him.
You can see Michael right there just going right across the curb. He's trying to shortcut as much as he can. He's very physical around here. It's worked for him in the past. He tends to jump over those curbs as much as possible. Whoa, there's a Gilles de Ferran. He obviously got tangled up with somebody there. There was another car
that was
backing
Fernandez
up.
was the other car.
They've been racing all through this, nose to tail. Obviously, somebody tried to make a pass.
So Fernandez backs it all the way off the course. De Ferran is able to get it going. We'll keep an eye out for Fernandez.
And back to Michael Andretti. He's very physical around here. We're just looking at a shot right now over his shoulder. We're looking at last year's winner, Paul Tracy, right in front of him. He seems to be closing up. Obviously, that style's benefiting him right now.
Michael Andretti, of course, won a couple of years ago. Boy, great shots. Nice, crystal clear.
See him going over that curve right there. And Michael says he really likes this track, but he said it takes a rhythm. Again, over the curve there. But it takes a rhythm. When you get in the rhythm, you can really make this place work.
Gil de Ferran just came limping into the pits with a motor sounding off song, and as you can see right there, Fernandez, they were going, there's de Ferran in the pits. You saw too from the onboard camera, the safety team down there trying to get Fernandez out of the escape road. Here's that situation, Danny.
Well, it looks like that Adrian just moved over there to protect his position a little bit. They were very close, just touched and spun Adrian around.
So de Ferran already back on the circuit as we come back to watch that battle for third place as Michael Andretti closes in on Paul Tracy. Here are two guys with really similar styles, Michael Andretti and Tracy. Now, we've been following the fortunes or misfortunes of Emerson Fittipaldi. He's now with Jan Beekes.
That's right, Paul. It turns out it is a misfortune now. It looks like it was an electrical problem for you. Was that the problem, Emma?
We don't know yet, but it was a shame. The car was running strong. I was very strong on full tanks, and I had a good pace beginning of the race. That's a shame. This year, they say it happens three together. This is the third one. Long Beach should be good.
Well, hopefully Long Beach will work well for you. I know it was early in the race, but any kind of read on track conditions so far?
Track conditions are very clean, very nice track. Looks beautiful, the track.
All right, we wish you better luck at Long Beach.
I hope so. Thank you.
I'll tell you what, Emerson's luck hasn't been very good here. He managed to either lose or get his passport stolen. Planned trips to Tahiti, the tickets for that were there. So
he's not having much luck,
but
he has had luck here in the past. Of course, he won it, I think, in 1992. I'd say right now that Michael's car, the black one right there behind Paul Tracy, looks to be a little bit quicker. He's just got to find a way around Paul, and that's not going to be easy.
All right, so 16 laps are now complete. Nothing changes at the top of the order. We've seen some interesting racing, but Jimmy Vasser still leads it over Scott Pruitt, Paul Tracy, Michael Andretti, and Alex Zanardi. Then Christian Fittipaldi, Greg Moore, Robbie Gordon, Bobby Rahal, and Mauricio Gugelmin. Chris Paradise, Australia, Paul Tracy is in trouble. He was running third, and we've got more than one car in trouble.
Look at this. They blocked the track. Somebody stopped their push.
And they're trying to look at it, gets a help because
Rahal pushed him. He pushed him out of the way. Robbie couldn't get going, and he pushed him out of the way. Look, there's Christian Fittipaldi. He stopped too. He's waving, hey, I'm stopped here. Give me some help. Oh, my gosh. Have you seen Rahal just push him out of the way like that?
Well, the nose cone's supposed to be strong enough. Here is Michael Andretti.
Trying to make a pass after the double chicane. That's a good spot. Going in on him. And Paul just turns down, and Michael, oh, don't come down now. Tap right there, rear wheel. And look what it did to Michael's right front. That might have just turned the steering wheel, but that also might have damaged that right front. Let's see here, does he get over him?
Yeah, running over the nose didn't help it either.
No, I don't think he actually ran over it. It looked close. But did you believe that with Rahal afterwards? And he's in a very critical spot there. Here we are from the other angle. Comes in, you see Michael's already locked up. He's going, uh-oh, don't turn, please don't turn. He's got a little sideways. Bam!
Oh.
That might have just turned that wheel, but look,
it looks bent.
It looked like he might have been it.
But that created a traffic jam down in the corner. And here's what Bobby Rahal did when he recognized he was in serious traffic problem.
Whoa, they're coming in the same corner. It's all jammed up. Look, they're trying to get a gear. Robbie can't get a gear. So Bobby's like, come on, you gotta go. So he just pushes him. Oh, my, way to go. I'll tell you who's got to really be thankful there is Robbie Gordon. I don't think he could get a gear.
Christian Fittipaldi is in the pits now. Not a good day for the Fittipaldis. What about Paul Tracy, though, Jackaroo?
Well, Paul, just as we surmised, they were practicing changing noses. Paul Tracy has to exchange one here under green flag conditions. Now, what they do is they have a set of set screws that hold the nose on. They are having some problems getting the set screws to start. They finally completed that action. They're backing away. But this has been a long stop to put a new set of front wings on Paul Tracy's car.
And, of course, during that, we're also keeping track of Christian Fittipaldi. They looked at the front of his car and finally got him back out in the action as well. It doesn't change the first two positions, Vassar and Pruitt, but Michael Andretti with some now what appear to be somewhat serious problems. And what's interesting too is we are only yellow in that area of the racetrack. That really surprises me considering how jammed up it was.
No.
And Paul Tracy starts to climb out of the car, and the twin checkered flags come out at the start-finish line, and that indicates full course yellow, and that means that virtually everybody will head into the pits for their stop. So the standings ahead of the stop: Vassar, Pruitt, Michael Andretti, Alex Zanardi. Greg Moore moves up as a result of that accident. Rahal, Gordon, and Gugelman will be back. This month on ABC Sports. In 2 weeks, the National Hot Rod Association Speed Demons head to Houston for the Slick 50 Nationals. And 6-time champion Al Unser Jr. looks for his 7th win at the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. That's all right here, April 14th on ABC Sports. So we're getting ready to go back to green flag racing once again. As we ride with Bobby Rahal, Jimmy Vassar is the leader, followed by Scott Pruitt, but they all made pit stops under this yellow. Nothing particularly noteworthy there, except for the fact that Al Unser Jr. was able to sneak up with that pit strategy that Roger Penske is playing and move into 3rd place, followed by Michael Andretti and Alex Zanardi. But Michael Andretti, when they go green, will receive a black flag for a pit speed limit violation. He was going 87 miles an hour, limits 80. Here they come off that final turn, and we're ready to go back running again at Surfers Paradise.
And don't forget, that's Roger Penske's strategy, but Al went from 16th starting position to 3rd.
At the front, they close up. Get a glimpse there of Al Unser Jr. He's actually the 3rd place car. Looking back from Vassar. We look back at him. Again, we're listening to Scott Pruitt. And if we're talking about rookies versus veterans, only 3 drivers in today's race have started all 6 races here in Australia. Fittipaldi, Rahal, and Al Unser Jr. Now, Danny, you were wondering, they have a device that controls the pit speed, don't they?
That's right. Right on the button on the steering wheel, they've got a little button that won't allow the car to go over whatever the speed limit is, 80, 82 miles an hour. And I wondered why that didn't work on Michael's.
Jan, what's the story there?
Well, Paul, the story is we asked the crew, was the button working? And they reluctantly shook their head and said the button is working fine, meaning that he either took his finger off the button too early or he came into pit road. And of course, it won't hold you back if you're already over the speed. It's better at holding you back as you're leaving the pits. The crew here in Newman Haas, very dejected, Paul.
Boy, look at this. Scott Pruitt is up on the back end of Jimmy Vassar. This is as close as he's been throughout the run here, which is now 21 laps old, 65 laps. The scheduled distance. The radio is open to Pruitt. We'll keep listening there, but I don't think they're going to bug him now.
9 o'clock at the fuel, 9 o'clock.
I stand corrected. 9 o'clock on the fuel. That should be just under 100% would be your guess, or?
Well, it depends on, of course, how they have it set, but it's probably down to like 98 or 96%. They don't want to lose too much ground. They want him to stay as close as he is, as we see right there, but they've got to conserve fuel to get to that next window. And let me tell you something. I worked with Jim McGee in 1991. He's one of the sharpest guys out there. He's a very clever crew chief and manager, and he's one of the best guys on the radio.
They make the turn now up along the Esplanade, right along the edge of the beach, off the Pacific Ocean, traveling north here. And Scott Pruitt is very much on the attack now. Engine power difference showing here, Honda versus Ford. Jack Arute.
Well, Jimmy Vassar underwent some cosmetic surgery during that pit stop, and we're pleased to say it was successful. Remember the cone that was wedged up by his helmet? Well, they removed it, just literally ripped it off. And I'll tell you what, guys, this could become a very valuable souvenir.
Does that mean you have it for sale, Jack? Or Danny, you want to bid on it?
No. I think that...
Danny, you don't have enough money to buy this.
Okay, Jack, that's all yours. You got it. But I think Jimmy might want that from you at the end of this race.
Well, Believe it or not, he did radio in, guys, and that's the truth. He did ask. He said to Mike Knight, the PR guy, don't let that cone get away. Kind of like Urban does in the football. Wants to save that football. Well, it's a little different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot different, Jack. Scott Pruitt was in pursuit, isn't right now.
He's close, but I think what we're seeing is just the legs of that Honda.
Michael Andretti into the pits again. This will be the black flag penalty. Stop and go. They'll take him right back out. There he goes. I thought for a minute there that they'd already assessed that, and then he was on his way in for a further look at what could be a front end or nose problem with the car. Apparently not that.
No, when you see just one guy out there, that's why they call it a stop and go. Of course, you just got to pull up, be very quick, and out of there. And that loses you enough time just coming into the pits and getting back out.
Vassar, Pruitt, Al Unser Jr., Alex Zanardi, Greg Moore now runs in 5th place. Greg Moore, one of the rookies this year, second in the rookie battle behind Zanardi. But he was struggling getting this race course down at first.
He had never been here before, of course. He's had trouble with the car. He's not feeling well today. Of course, a lot of people have gotten this flu, this bug that's going around. I guess you all started that in Indianapolis, and it carried it down on the plane to Rio, and then, of course...
just a couple seconds ago, Mauricio Gugelmin coming up behind Rahal.
Just trying to get those brakes in there.
And look who else is there. De Ferrin once again saying, oh, I don't want to get one of these again. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Adrian Fernandez was involved with Gil de Ferrin just a couple of laps ago, and it took you out of the race.
Yeah, we're very disappointed. You know, the team was doing great. We were having a good race, and well, you couldn't pass me, and you know, you just hit me on the back. So you know, it's just a shame.
Well, guys, he said he might have hurt his wrist a little bit, but he walked back here and he seems to be okay. Back to you.
Adrian Fernandez, watching Al Unser Jr., 3rd place. Vassar, Pruitt Jr., Zanardi, Greg Moore. That's the top of the order here, followed by Bobby Rahal, De Ferrin, Robbie Gordon, Brian Herta, and Stefan Johansson, as we have 24 laps of 65 complete. The IndyCar drivers had a chance to get out on the beach here at Surfers, play a little volleyball with a couple of world-class ladies players, and I think they were just happy every time they were able to get the ball over the net. That's an over the net there. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Surfers Paradise, Australia, nothing changes in the front. Vassar, Pruitt, Al Unser Jr. Here's a change, Michael Andretti. And it looks like they have brought out the computer, the laptop. What are they looking for?
I have no idea. When they're plugging that in, that's usually something you do at a pit stop.
Look at this, Alex Zanardi. We had a report that he was slowing on the course, and now he's rolling very slowly into the pits, Jan Beekes.
Yes, the initial report, Paul, was that it was a gearbox problem. Originally, it was just difficulty in shifting, but now, obviously, that problem with the gearbox has gotten worse, and he'll be lucky to get it down. He's coasting now into our view. Let's check in now quickly with Jack Arute.
Yeah, and this is the brain trust for Scott Pruitt. Pat Patrick, the car owner, Jim McGee, the team manager. Now, we understand, Pat, that there's a radio problem between the pits and your driver.
Yes, there is, Jack.
Now, he can hear you, or you can't hear him. What's the situation?
He can hear us, but we cannot hear him.
So now what they've done, gentlemen, is they went and got an additional pit board. They dispensed it over across the wall to the pit signaling area. That's the only way that they can communicate with him. Now, the problem is they're concerned about fuel mileage. They have put up the following message, 1.72, wanting Scott to acknowledge it. What does that mean? We must get 1.72 miles per gallon. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, to further up the Alex Zanardi story, what has happened is they realized as soon as the car came to a stop that Alex Zanardi's day was over. Right now he's being debriefed, has the helmet off, so Alex Zanardi's day is over here early on.
And that's one of the stories of the rookies. By the way, Jan Beekes, 36 years old. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Paul.
So Alex Zanardi, we were talking at the start about what about the rookies in this. That's one of the things we've been following. Zanardi out, but the other rookie, Greg Moore, is now running in 4th place, and that's really a pretty spectacular run as he's come up from well back in the field. The top 5 are Vassar, Pruitt, Unser Jr., Greg Moore, and Bobby Rahal. So we keep an eye on Scott Pruitt here. And remember, out of the race earlier with the incident was Paul Tracy. And here's Jan Beekes.
Paul Tracy has made his way down to the garage area now. Paul, we had a look at it from the onboard of Michaels. How did it unfold from your perspective?
Well, at first, the Marlboro car was running great. We made a good start. I was pacing myself, saving the brakes, getting good fuel mileage, and Michael's just textbook, isn't it? I mean, he just comes along and locks up and hits you from behind and spins you around. And you know, it's disappointing for the team, but it's got to stop. You know, it just has to stop.
Well, Carl Haas calls the shots for Michael Andretti. And Carl, now your driver is out of the race. What happened?
Well, Michael just had an engine problem and he pitted, and of course we lose a lot of time on that. And I guess it's, you know, pretty much over.
For the Kmart Racing team and the Bud team, this has not been the best of years so far. It sounds like Michael has gotten refired, but it's been a very frustrating couple of times.
Yes, it sure has. We're both reasonable position there. You know, Michael got up to third there with pit stop ahead of Unser, and we were in good shape. Christian got caught up in an accident in front of him where he lost a lap on that.
Now more trouble as well, as we understand, Paul Page, that Bobby Rahal has come onto pit road.
Exactly. Rahal slowed down. We saw an indication of something, but I'm not sure what it was, Danny.
No, I think he just locked up a little bit there, but he had a bigger problem. Bobby, that wasn't anything that would cause the problem or cause him coming to the pits. They're taking the cover off the back, and he's gotten out of the car. He's got a bigger problem than that, probably in the back end.
And he was up at the front as well. Another guy up at the front, Jan Beekes, is Alex Zanardi.
That's right, Paul. It seems like this is the time of the race, and we're seeing a lot of problems. Alex, what was it that put you out? The early indication was gearbox trouble?
Yeah. Since we put the wheel down in the ground on Friday, we had that problem with the gearbox, and that's what it stopped us on Friday afternoon. We thought we fixed the problem, but apparently we didn't.
Now, you would be the best person to tell us, how do you think Jimmy Vasser's chances are now in comparison with how your car was working?
Well, my car was running pretty well. It's got more or less the same setup. I guess he has a very good chance. His gearbox doesn't have any problem at all. And if things goes well, I think he's the best guy out there to win that race.
You enjoy your first race in the street circuit in an Indy car?
No, I didn't, because I was... After we put the wheel down in the ground, I knew that I could have done good results in this place, and I'm really disappointed for how the things goes. But there's nothing we can do. Just keep our concentration in Long Beach. Now we know that we can do it, and I think I'm going to collect some more points.
Very disappointed, Alex Zanardi. Paul?
And won't ask that question of a guy early out. At the front of the order, Vasser, Pruitt, Al Unser Jr., Greg Moore up to fourth. The Farron is fifth right now. And Christian Fittipaldi, you're going to look at him there. He is, of course, off the pace and well back down in the field, running in 18th place right now. But he is separating Al Unser Jr. from Scott Pruitt. Bobby Rahal out of the race, Jack Arute.
Remember, Paul, at the beginning of the show, we said up and down through the gearbox 30 times. Bobby Rahal, your gearbox let you down.
Yeah, it started being difficult in downshifts. It was fine upshifting. It started missing a gear. It would go from fifth to third, and then the last few laps started going fifth to second. I was trying to catch Moore. We could get a run at him, and then the gearbox, I'd miss a shift or something. So it just started making death rattles, but we made some changes to the car before the race, and it really started to come good in the race. I don't know if we could have run up front, but you know, fourth or third was, I think, a good possibility.
You had a second place
back in Columbus, you know, Grammy and everybody. Sorry.
You can't say much more than that. Former champion Bobby Rahal out today.
On board now, Andrew Rivero. He actually runs in 16th place. This is the guy that won the race just 2 weeks ago in Rio in front of his countrymen. Vasser, Pruitt, Al Unser Jr., Greg Moore, Gil de Ferran, the top five, followed by Gordon, Herta, Raul Boesel, Stefan Johansson, and Carlos Guerrero. Here's Paradise, Australia, and we're on a full course yellow because of Jeff Krosnoff, who jumped the curb and slid into the wall. Now, just a few moments ago, Jimmy Vasser came into the pits. It was unexpected because he didn't get a full tank of fuel on his last stop, and that gave the lead over to this man, Scott Pruitt. But with this full course caution, Scott Pruitt should be in excellent shape. By the way, the coverage here being brought to you by Channel 10 Australia as we ride the international feed, and they follow the leader of the race now, Scott Pruitt, driving for Pat Patrick. And And there he goes. He decides to stay out under this full course.
Well, I think the reason he wanted to stay out is he wants to get up. He wants to get as much of that lead back, stay with that lead as much as he can, and come in when they kind of packed up the field so he loses as little ground as possible. He doesn't want to lose that lead in the pits to Jimmy Vasser.
Another name being added to the long list of cars out. Jack Arute.
Well, if you want to see a portrait of disappointment, just look at this man, Michael Andretti. This just has not been your year, Michael.
Yeah, I don't know. We can't do much right now, but keep plugging away.
Now, we interviewed Paul Tracy, and he had some not-so-complimentary things to say. Do you want to retort anything?
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for it because when I got in there, I wasn't even going to attempt to pass, but my front brakes locked, so then I had to go for it, and I was hoping he'd see me, and he didn't, and, you know, it was definitely not on purpose. I felt bad. So, sorry, Paul.
Paul?
All right, now during these stops, Danny, you were also watching down toward pit exit at the Chip Ganassi pits.
Yes, and Jimmy came back in. Now, I think this is probably a strategy. They probably just went ahead and topped up his tank, and they got a situation there in the pits, too, where, oh, Brian Hurt is out of the car.
Brian Hurt has got a fire. They pulled the whole fuel tank over on this.
They pulled the whole fuel tank over. They got him on the ground. They're watering him down. He's obviously got fuel all over him. That water will put everything out, but that is not a good feeling right now. But look, the whole tank's laid over in the pit lane.
And apparently it's still burning in that area. Remember, this is methanol alcohol. It burns with an invisible flame. They're keeping the pits open, though. There are a lot of people and quite a bit of water out in that one area.
You see something there. There's other crews down there helping out. I've had a pit fire like that at Portland last year. They come down there because they know how dangerous it is for everybody, and nobody can help you more than those other pit crews.
Well, but the scary situation is that the fuel tank, which had some fuel in it, you can see behind that palm tree, the stand for it, and it's over and on the ground.
That would probably mean that they went and, that probably means that they went and plugged him in, and he started to go away, and they weren't plugged out, and it pulled the whole tank over with the hose still hooked into the car.
All right, well, they do have the medical people on the scene down there, and so we'll keep track of that. I don't want to get invasive with this, but there might be an indication that there is in fact an indication that there is someone injured, whether or not that's Brian Herta or one of the other crew members as well.
No, Brian's up. He was walking around. He ran over to look who was hurt on the ground.
You can see Brian Herta back in the background. Apparently he's all right. Scott Pruitt, the leader of the race, is in, Jan.
The leader of the race, Scott Pruitt, brings it to a stop. And this was a very curious choice as far as when to come into the pits. Generally speaking, when you have a yellow flag, you want to come in on the very first lap. But at the last minute, they had a radio communication to him to tell him to stay out. Scott Pruitt underway, just over 16 seconds. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, you're looking at the aftermath of the Brian Herta incident. You're looking at Larry Ellard, who's being administered to by the IndyCar safety crew. But if we can show you right here, here is the fuel tank that literally rolled over pit wall. But I think the thing that should be remembered, folks, is take a look at the different color uniforms that are here. This is the part about racing that's so incredible. Everybody rushed to the assistance of this team. And the report preliminarily is no serious injuries. That's the preliminary report. We'll check with CART and give you more in a minute.
Well, that's great news there. And there's more than just the danger of the fuel right there. There's the danger of the fact you have those high-pressure tanks that are also over the wall as well. We'll be back with more from Surfers Paradise. Sports, it's the final round of the LPGA's first major of the year. Patty Sheehan and Brandy Burton are tied after the third round at the Nabisco Dinah Shore. The winner will be decided next, right here on ABC Sports. And we're coming back off of this full course caution that has been very eventful. And this is the situation at the end of the caution. Brian Herta, you see him about midway. You see a flash there as that car caught fire. And I guess Channel 10 doesn't intend to keep on with that. Jack Arute?
Well, we're looking at Brian Herta. He is soaking wet, not from racing, but from having a fire put out. Take us through what happened, Brian.
Well, you know, we were just biding our time there in the shell of the Duracell Charger, and you know, we came in for a pit stop there, caught a lucky yellow, and we got pulled the fuel tank over the wall. You know, it's unfortunate. It's a terrible shame. The most important thing is everybody's okay, and you know, I guess you just thank God for that now.
Well, we saw this in Indianapolis back in 1969. Remember a guy named Lloyd Ruby? Lost the Indy 500 by pulling out too soon. Jan Bigas?
One of the drivers that we saw getting in trouble out there was Jeff Krosnoff. He's made his way to pit lane. Jeff, what got you in trouble?
I was having some brake problems. The pedal was very soft and the braking was inconsistent, and I just got bit. I mean, sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. I went into the corner a little easy, wasn't there, and it came on all of a sudden and it just spun me around. So.
Okay, there's big action on the track. We got to get upstairs. Thanks, Jeff.
As they came back to green flag, this man, Jimmy Vasser, jumped in the lead. Greg Moore came in right behind him, and then they all got tangled up in one of the corners, and it was costly for Moore.
Well, it looked like what happened is he was right there behind him. He went in, and he must have had some kind of a gearbox problem because a lot of cars passed him. He looked like he was almost stalled in the middle of the track. Now he's underway again, but he's lost a lot of ground, a lot of positions.
And you can look back just occasionally. There's Scott Pruitt. There is Greg Moore. So just upstream. And Jimmy Vasser has some slower traffic that he has to deal with in the person of Andre Ribeiro. And they've gone back to a full course yellow, Al Unser Jr.
Oh,
in trouble.
And he was having such a great, but he was having such a great day. Both of those guys were up into 4th and 5th spot, and or 3rd and 4th spot, and they must have been going for a position. Both of them had a great run going, and Little Al, of course, it started 16. All of that for naught.
So a race that was very quiet here at starting and almost processional has changed hands a couple of different ways and a couple of different times just in the last few laps. This is the replay of Al Unser Jr. and DeFerrin.
Whoa. Uh-huh. He tried to get in there, and DeFerrin just took the line that he was supposed to. He wasn't up alongside him. Both of them touched, obviously hit the wall, and there they are.
And both in precarious positions, so the IndyCar safety crew is there. The full course yellow is out once again, and Jimmy Vasser is leading Scott Pruitt. We'll be back. Surfers Paradise on board with Stefan Johansson. Saturday, beginning at 1 noon Central on ABC Sports, the USA women's basketball team faces a crucial test as they take on the College All-Stars. Then we'll go to Pennsylvania for some arena-style bowling at the Flagship Open. And on ABC's Wide World of Sports, it's the dance competition from the NutraSweet World Challenge of Champions, plus the Santa Anita Derby presented by Visa. That's all Saturday here on ABC Sports. So quite a bit has happened here in the last few laps. We're on the 44th lap of 65. We've had a swapping of positions at the front of the field. Vasser coming into a stop early because he was short-fueled on the previous stop. Pruitt took over the lead and then came in under a full course caution. And when he did that, all up and down the pits, there was bedlam. Several cars going out of the race, but most notably Brian Herta pulling away, still attached to the fuel tank and actually pulling it over the wall. Thank goodness no one was hurt as a result of that. Jimmy Vasser is back in the lead, followed by Pruitt, Greg Moore, Raul Boesel, and Eddie Lawson as we go green once again.
2 wheels to 4, and Eddie Lawson's right there. That's great to see.
So Jimmy Vasser with the leaders all close on him. Here comes Pruitt. There comes Moore. Raul Boesel driving for Team Green, sitting in 4th place. So Jimmy Vasser, and the indication too is that Scott Pruitt is now short shifting and being very careful about his fuel. Now you also saw Al Unser Jr. and Gilles DeFerrin, who were running 3rd and 4th at the time, get tangled up. And they were able to get restarted, but obviously that's put them well down in the field. Unser Jr. sitting now in 14th position, and DeFerrin fared a little better. He came out of that confrontation in 8th place. Mauricio Gugelmin trying an interesting line down the inside.
Boy, he gets them all locked up right there, but that's for a position. He was passing Eddie Lawson there. Look at this.
Yeah, but look at this. It's Fangio on the outside.
And Gilles DeFerrin gets through.
Oh,
there's some racing going on. These last 5 laps have been exciting. There's been a lot going on.
Very tight circuit here. You have to be careful, but as the race goes on, you get just a little bit more desperate, and that seems to be what's happening here. Vassar in front, still unchallenged, followed by Pruitt and Moore. You're on board Andre Ribeiro right now. He runs 11th place. Let's just ride with him and listen to the shifts. Interesting story that I think tells you exactly what the Australians are all about. We were over at a local hospital visiting our regular producer of these shows, Deb Luganbuhl, who is down with pneumonia, complication of that flu that Danny mentioned earlier that seemed to be going around here. And when we left the hospital, it was not possible to get a cab because everything was so busy over at the circuit. All the cabs were tied up there. So we're standing on a corner with the idea of walking back to the hotel, the 3-4 mile walk, when one of the locals pulls up and says, "Hey, you guys need a ride?" And all 7 of us piled into his car. He goes back through the race traffic all the way to the Marriott Hotel. I'll tell you what, that tells you exactly who the Australians are. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, Paul, there's some big news coming out of the pit lane right now. First of all, Scott Pruitt. We talked about Scott coming in. We wondered, why did he wait 1 lap and not come in at the usual time right when the pace car comes out? Well, according to Pat Patrick, he said if we would have come in 1 lap earlier, we couldn't have made it on fuel, which means Scott Pruitt now can make it to the end of the race. So we quickly then checked in with Greg Moore's crew. Steve Chalice said, we can also make it on fuel. Said, well, we better check on Vassar. And according to Tom Anderson, Jimmy Vassar, even though he came in much earlier than the others, is not expected again on pit road.
Well, Jan, something just to add to that was, of course, during that, was that Jimmy Vassar snuck into the pit lane and I think topped it off a couple laps after he had been in earlier.
Yep, he was down there at the end of the pits at the same time that everything was going crazy up in Brian Herta's pit.
And of course, something that'll happen here is, of course, we see right there is Scott Pruitt with Greg Moore right behind them. So it's going to come down to whose car's handling a little better, who's getting a good fuel mileage. Scott may want to run a conservative race, but not if he's going to lose a spot to Greg Moore. Don't forget, they're battling for that championship as well.
Going back through the stories at the start of the race here and that winning combination, well, it still appears to be the Reynard Honda Firestone, but Scott Pruitt is out to disprove that. Then the rookies of the race, Zanardi with his problem, but Greg Moore with a terrific run, bringing him up into 3rd place behind Scott Pruitt right now. Championship points, well, the battle is still right there at the front of the field. The 2 guys tied in points coming into this race, Jimmy Vassar and Scott Pruitt. And the toll of the track, well, you've seen that visually, not only on the track, but in the pits. And another guy being reported out now, Robbie Gordon, Jan Beekes?
That's right, Paul. Robbie Gordon now makes his way to pit lane like so many drivers. Boy, this is a tough day on machinery. What put you out?
Some kind of crank trigger. We got a really bad misfire. You know, we had a great game plan going. We started 14th, and we just wanted to stay clean. And guys are running into each other, and you know, we were slowly creeping up to the front. You know, I think we were 5th, and we, you know, if we wouldn't have had to sit and stop here with Rahal going out, but. You know, it's unfortunate. We just wanted to gain some points today and go on to Long Beach and go after this championship. We've got a lot of work to do.
Certainly been a tough start of the season for Walker Racing. I know you, I, and everyone also want to wish Scott Goodyear a quick recovery back home.
On board with Jimmy Vassar, still the leader of the race, out in front by 3.1 seconds. And Carlos Guerrero into the barrier. And that looks like a precarious position that may, in fact, bring out another yellow flag. Danny?
Yeah, you can look right there at those back tires. You can see the flat spot right on the back tires where he got it all locked up. Boom, boom, right there. I think his day's over.
And they've gone to the full course caution once again. It's still Jimmy Vassar, then Scott Pruitt, Greg Moore, Raul Boesel, and Mauricio Gugelmin at the top of the order, followed by DeFerrin, Christian Fittipaldi, Eddie Lawson, Johansson, and the guy in the accident, Carlos Guerrero. Paradise as the green flag comes out again. Vassar, Pruitt, Moore, Raul Boesel, Mauricio Gugelmin, and Gil de Ferran has moved into 6th place, up 3 positions in just the last couple of laps. You can see them all right together there. They're in race order on the track.
Yeah, and that yellow really helped him. He was moving through the field, picked up a few spots, but that yellow helped him a lot.
Let's go to Jackaroo.
Well, one of the great stories unfolding here in Australia concerns Jimmy Vassar. You know, Vassar comes from the Seattle area, and his mother, Roxanne Collins, has not seen him race at all in 1996. In fact, the last time she saw him race was back when he won, 3 hours later in Portland, Oregon, and had it taken away. Well, his mother has flown all the way down under. This is the first race she's seen. Roxanne is sitting in a suite sponsored by Honda, watching her son not only take the pole, but now lead in this IndyCar Grand Prix.
Jimmy Vassar, is he possibly looking at the 2nd victory of his career, the 2nd of this season, the 1st repeat winner of the season? He won at Miami on the oval there. Now on the very first road course, a temporary circuit on the streets of Surfers Paradise. But you can see that both Greg Moore and Scott Pruitt have closed in just a bit. Then Raul Boesel and Mauricio Gugelmin are back about 100 yards. As they come back onto the pit straight again, we continue to watch Vassar and Pruitt at the front of the field. You'll remember the run 2 weeks ago at Rio and Mark Blundell and that crash. Now he's with Jan Beekes.
That's right, Paul, and we had hoped that we might see Mark Blundell in a race car, but no, he's not in a race car. He's in the timing stand. Now, Mark, a very bad crash for you. We thought we might see you driving here, but there was more serious injury than we thought.
Yeah, it was a very poor accident for me. Unfortunately, I had 3 fractures in my foot, not just one, and my lungs and ribs collided, and all the cartilage muscle on the rib cage is stretched out of place.
Now, we've just had a chance to look at the replay. Have you watched that yourself? Have you now had a chance to see how horrifying that crash was?
I watched it 2 times. I turned off the TV. I don't want to see it anymore.
That was a horrifying crash, and you had high praise for these Indy cars taking that kind of impact.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I thank the guys at Reynard. What a great car. I mean, I'm lucky to be alive. The 200-mile-an-hour incident, that was a big one.
Now, you're in a cast now. When might we see you back in a race car?
Honestly and realistically, I think maybe Nazareth. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss out the 2 road circuits here and Long Beach.
All right, well, I know ovals may not be the first place to start, but we look forward to seeing you at Nazareth.
Glad to see that he is only wearing a cast after that one.
Boy, I don't like to see that at all. I've seen that a few more times than he has, but it still gives me chills when I watch that deal.
Again, testimony, though, to the rules makers on how they specify these cars will be built.
That's true. You know, one thing I just noticed right here is at the restart, everybody's bunched up, and it seems like those 3 Firestone shod cars pull away a little bit from that group of Goodyear shod cars right behind them.
Exactly one of the things, in fact, Jack Root mentioned it at the beginning of the race here, but we're also seeing the battle with the relative power units and chassis, especially the Renard, the Honda Power, the Firestone tires here at the front, but right behind them, you're looking at an entirely different situation with Scott Pruitt, the Ford Power, different chassis.
That's right, but one thing that we cannot see from the booth or from the pits or any place is what's really going on with those guys in terms of the fuel. Don't forget, they're trying to manage their fuel to get them to the end and to be racy at the end as well, to be able to maybe get that opportunity. So the guy's trying to conserve as much fuel as he can, but not lose touch with that car right in front of him.
Save the fuel, save the car, save the tires. Jan Beekes?
Well, Paul, you're talking about, in particular, Danny mentioned those top 3 cars being Firestone. Well, Goodyear knows that they're at a disadvantage now on a street circuit, and they made a decision on Friday evening that they are going to work flat out. They're going to close down one of their plants and build new tires to be ready for Long Beach. They realize that Firestone has that advantage, and they don't want it to last too long. So Goodyear is going to burn the midnight oil leading in the next 2 weeks up to Long Beach.
You know, I still, as many years as I've been watching this, I still find it amazing that the tire can be improved, can be changed, all the work that they do and make things faster. You would think it's the one component on the car that would have stabilized years ago.
Well, you would, but when you get 2 tire manufacturers in it, everybody wants to make a little bit better tire than the next guy. don't forget, they don't have to change much in construction or anything. They just got to change the mix of that rubber that's on there just to give it a little bit more grip.
There's Gil de Ferran running in 6th place, trying to catch up to Mauricio Gugelmin and battle for position. He's been coming back up through the field.
But don't forget, the one guy that's right in front of him on the road is Al Unser Jr., the guy that he tangled with earlier in the race.
And a wonderfully easy guy to pass.
Oh, yeah.
Back at the front of the field, Jimmy Vasser. Now 2.19 seconds ahead of 2nd place Scott Pruitt. And I think on the straightaways here, where he tends to increase the lead, that you're seeing as a product of engine versus engine.
It is, but again, Paul, that could be where does he have that fuel mixture set and where does Scott Pruitt have it set? And that can be a bigger factor than even the engine.
Honda versus Ford Cosworth. Again, too, you know, here we're talking a formula. Turbocharged engine, 161 cubic inches, has been around forever. And yet the engine manufacturers make them more powerful, make them faster. And what's really impressed me is they have made them more reliable. First, second, again the interval, just over 2 inches. Andre Ribeiro locks him up, gets it stopped.
Didn't hit anything. If he kept that motor running, of course, he might be able to get pushed back and get going again. And the car, by the way, is supposed to, by the regulations, have reverse in it. It's sometimes difficult. It doesn't always work, but they're supposed to have reverse in that car.
So at Surfers Paradise, it's Vasser, Pruitt, Greg Moore, Raul Boesel, Mauricio Gugelmin, de Ferran, Christian Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, Eddie Lawson, and Andre Ribeiro. And just over the edge of the track, the Surfers Paradise Marriott. And boy, I'll tell you what, when they weren't on the track, a lot of the teams were here doing things like this, scuba diving in their pool. It's so big. Great place. We'll be back. At Surfers Paradise, Australia, you're right on board with the leader of the race, Jimmy Vasser. Next time he crosses the line, there'll be 8 laps to go. On a race that has been punctuated with a number of cautions, a number of key people out of the play, people like Emerson Fittipaldi, Bobby Rahal, Michael Andretti, Paul Tracy, and Robbie Gordon, Alex Zanardi, all out of the race with, in almost all of those cases, some situation of contact. But Jimmy Vasser has been extremely smooth right from the start. We have his radio channel open to him right now. And really, smoothness is a trademark here, isn't it?
Well, Jimmy's a smooth driver anyway, but it helps when you have the tire situation. When you got a car that's working, it's set up right, and you got a good tire, it's a lot easier to be smooth than it is when you take a Michael situation or even a Paul Tracy, where they've got a tire that's not quite as good on the Goodyear, and they're having to throw the car around and over the curbs to make up that ground.
As the end approaches, let's do some checkup in the pits, beginning with John.
Well, first of all, we checked in with Pat Patrick Racing, and it turns out that they have told Scott Pruitt to go to the 7 o'clock position on the fuel. Now, we heard earlier during those radio communications for him to turn it to 9, so we would just assume that that means they've really leaned that down. Now, to comment on your earlier comment between you, Paul, and Danny, you were talking about this is a nice comparison between the Honda power plant and the Ford Cosworth. Just like Goodyear, Ford Cosworth they have realized that they're a little bit short on the power, so starting in Long Beach, for the rest of the season, every single racetrack, they're going to have new development pieces on that Ford Cosworth. So they're also feeling the heat to get more power. Let's now go down to Jack Arute.
Well, Giannis, we watched Greg Moore, who's currently posted in the 3rd position in this race. Let's go back and talk a little bit. We're talking about this tire war, this tire battle. You talked about Goodyear closing down one entire group to go back and build a tire between now and Long Beach. Well, let me tell you what Firestone did immediately following the Miami Grand Prix. They decided that rather than build a tire for a road course in their Tennessee plant, that they needed some more development time. So what they did is put their heads together and realized that they also had a development center in Tokyo, Japan. They are owned by Bridgestone. So what was done is all of the development work for the road racing tire we see here today was done in Tokyo. What was the reason for that? It gave them an additional 3 weeks of development time, 3 weeks of lead time before they had to actually produce the tire and have it here at Australia.
So the race-winning strategies occur not only in the cockpit on the track, but in all the pre-planning. Vassar, Pruett, Moore, Raul Boesel, Mauricio Gugelmin. You saw Moore. He's a full 7 seconds behind the second-place Scott Pruett. And Pruett now sits about 7 seconds back from Jimmy Vassar. So is the San Franciscan Vassar on his way to his second win of the year? Sure looks like it now, but the thing to remember about this track at Surfers is that things happen very quickly and can happen right up to the end. We've seen that in all of the runs here. So while you can be confident, you can't be absolutely sure.
And the most interesting thing about Jimmy was that even as late as October, November last year, he wasn't sure he was going to have a drive with Chip Ganassi. They were still going back and forward a little bit. Chip wasn't sure what he was going to do. These changes have obviously helped. He's had a pole now and a win. He looks on his way to his second win out of 3 races, and his career has really blossomed.
And that battle for the championship, too, remember it was brought even in a tie by the single point for the pole position. Now Jimmy Vassar moves ahead by a single point by leading the most laps in this race. 58 laps now complete. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, we continue to track the major fuel conservation effort by all of the drivers here. And checking with Tom Anderson, here's what they've done with Jimmy Vassar. That last caution opened it up a little bit for them, but not enough to go to full rich. What they've done, according to Tom, is they're running just 4 clicks down. So while they are conserving fuel, they're doing it with the fuel mapping, not with short shifting. And they say if we have to, we do have a little bit in reserve.
But Jimmy Vassar now beginning to pull away even further from Scott Pruett. So the reserve might be something that pays off here. Scott Pruett has dropped another 2 seconds behind Vassar.
And also, we've seen that Greg Moore has dropped way back. And, of course, he's got a Mercedes power plant. So maybe that thing is drinking a little bit more fuel than the other two.
There's Greg Moore. And, boy, there's the rest of that group. Raul Boesel and then Gugelmin and the DeFerrin. They're all right together there. That Christian Fittipaldi, he's part of that fight as well. So, still not over and still a chance that there could be a problem as we take a look at the beautiful beaches here at Surfers Paradise. We'll be back for the finish after this. Surfers Paradise, Australia, and one of those interesting rules, this race is either a scheduled distance or a specific time. The time length is 2 hours. They're approaching that at about the same time they're approaching the end of the lap. We've just crossed over the 60th lap, and already many of the security people have moved into position to handle a winners here, winner's circle, and of course that might be Jimmy Vassar as we continue to watch the battle that sits back 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Gugelmin, DeFerrin, Fittipaldi, Boesel in this fight too.
And I wonder how many of those team managers put that in their equation for their fuel run. How many of them, like Jim McGee, took that into consideration when they were leaning down that fuel?
Let's go down to Scott Pruett's pits. Jan Beekes.
Well, Paul, we have the answer to that very question. They were in a big panic here in Pat Patrick Racing, deciding if they could make it on fuel, would they have to go for a splash and go? But then the IndyCar officials came by and informed them about the time race. They were trying to calculate it themselves, and then it appeared as though there was a big sigh of relief as they made a little pool around the engineer saying, can we make it? Can we make it? And they hesitated, but they did shake their head in the affirmative. They think they can do it. But they have really throttled back the fuel, Paul.
Well, the battle is not for the lead. Vassar has it by 10 seconds. Then Greg Moore sits back another 15 seconds. In 3rd place, the real battle is 4th. Raul Boesel, Gugelmin, DeFerrin, Christian Fittipaldi, all right together.
And, of course, they've all bunched up, but they've probably been told by their pits, we've got enough fuel, go ahead and turn it back up to 100% or 98% so you can run and take a run at those other guys. We saw that shot earlier where they were all bunched very closely together.
And an indication from some of the course marshals here that Raul Boesel, currently fourth, may be slowing. In fact, he is on the course. And Gugelmin and De Ferran and Fittipaldi have all jumped around him. Trying to discover, did he run out of fuel?
Well, of course, we're listening there, and we're on board with Jimmy Vasser. He doesn't seem to be short shifting or backing off at all. He's just going.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, according to Barry Green, it thinks they may have a fuel pickup problem because the engine has just starved itself to death. He said, our readout shows that we should have had sufficient fuel, but we see this often in the late stages of races. The fuel pickup fails, and even though you've got some in the tank, it doesn't get to the engine.
In fact, that's something, Jack, that happened.
There's the interval second to third. Sorry to interrupt you, Danny.
That's okay. But in fact, that's what happened to Gilles de Ferran in Brazil when he ran out of fuel. They still had 4 gallons on board.
And on a road course, it's even more critical because it's sloshing in both directions.
That's right. Even with the foam that's in the tank to stop that, it sloshes back and forth, and they'll be starved a little bit more on a track like this.
Second place, Scott Pruitt. Battle for the championship still very tight, especially given these positions. All eyes watching the clocks now as we've just come over the 62nd lap, and keeping an eye on the flagman stand as well to see which flag he's going to put into his hand as we move down to the finish of this race. Next time by, it'll be 2 scheduled laps to the finish. But we're still watching the clock.
Boy, this has got to be tough on the crews. They don't know if it's exactly at this time, or it's going to be 2 laps, it's going to be a timed race, which is going to come first, and exactly how much is it.
So with Raul Boesel in trouble, he's dropped out of the top 10, and what that's done, it's Vasser, Pruitt, Moore. You can see Moore is beginning to reel Pruitt in. Then Gugelmin, De Ferran, that's the top 5. Then Christian Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, Eddie Lawson, Andre Ribeiro, and Al Unser Jr. There's De Ferran, who's also reeling in Gugelmin. So we've got some good battles back behind the leader. All right, let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, a quick report on Jimmy Vasser, and we talked with Steve Chalice, his engineer, and he said, we are now going to give him the fuel to try and chase down Scott Pruitt. We think we have enough. We're going to richen it up, and he's going to go for it. So Greg Moore right now trying to close that gap on Scott Pruitt.
We'll try and track him, too. Remember, the coverage here comes from Channel 10 Australia. We don't control it, and hopefully they will take a look back and keep track at Greg Moore chasing Scott Pruitt.
Those 2
There's Moore there.
Those 2 cars we were just watching, Maurizio Gugelmin and that red and white and yellow car, and the yellow car of Gilles de Ferran, both of those guys have experienced spins today, yet they're back up and they're battling for 4th and 5th.
63 laps into the record book. In his hand, Jens Wintel has the white flag and looks to the leader of the race as he comes by. So we'll go the distance. He's over on the backside, paralleling the Pacific Ocean and heading north as the sun begins to fall behind the buildings here.
Noticed how he stayed away from the curb that time. He wasn't going to jump over it this close to the finish. He's being very conservative. He's got a good lead. He doesn't want to make any mistakes at this point.
11.5-second margin right now over second place. And so as he comes off, we should be able to see him. There we'll see the white flag. And I'll tell you what, especially with a long course here, nearly 3 miles, 2.8. The laps around here so long that you can imagine what's going through his head every lap.
He isn't being that conservative, though. I saw him slide it out of that corner. He's having fun.
You can see the white flag. 1 more lap to go for Jimmy Vasser. Pruitt still holding off Greg Moore. Jimmy Vasser, just a pure race driver. It's all he's ever wanted to do. It's all he pays any attention to.
Jimmy told me the other day at the beach, he said, I've been racing since I was 5 years old. He said, I started then with my dad running little quarter midgets. And he said, we used to race all through the summer. His dad's got to be pretty proud right now.
Absolutely. Mom's here watching him, may see him take his first IndyCar win that she's able to see. He, of course, won at Miami. She was not there. And they continue to maintain position at the front of the field of Vasser, Pruett, Greg Moore. Christian Fittipaldi has just made a move on Stefan Johansson, and Christian has moved into 5th place. Johansson down to 6th. And DeFerrin has dropped back as well. He's now down in 7th place. We've got the radio open on Jimmy Vasser's two-way communications. That channel is open.
They probably don't want to talk to him too much right now. They want to break that concentration. When he comes across the start-finish line, I think they'll start talking a little bit more.
Talking about history as we watch this final lap unfold. Jack Brabham drove the Cooper Climax around here that he started the rear engine revolution with at Indy. And here's the final corner as Jimmy Vasser lines up victory number 2 in the Indy cars and takes the twin checkered flags here at Surfers Paradise, Australia. Keeping an eye on the battle for second place. We'll watch it as we go to Jan Beekes.
Well, the pit crew here, as you waited, these guys are absolutely thrilled. Tom Anderson and the crew absolutely elated here for Jimmy Vasser. These guys put on a good car. Chip Ganassi also getting the congratulations with Robert Clark from Honda. These guys are pumped.
And Scott Pruett holds off the charge by Greg Moore. So Pruett is second, followed by Moore in third, then Mauricio Gugelmin, Christian Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, Eddie Lawson, and Andre Ribeiro. We'll be back. A full hour of America's Funniest Home Videos, followed by Lois and Clark. And then Emmy winner Kirstie Alley stars in a world premiere Sunday night movie event, Radiant City, tonight on ABC. Jimmy Vasser has won his second, and he is with Jack.
And Paulie's the first two-time winner of 1996, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's my first time to win, too. It feels great. It's I owe it all to the team. I mean, it was the most beautiful race car I've driven in my life. It didn't do anything wrong. I was just hoping I wouldn't, and fortunately I didn't, and we won the race. So here's the Target Chip Ganassi Racing Team.
Tell me about the cone incident when it got wedged up by your helmet there.
Did it? I didn't know that. There's cones flying every time I come through there, so I didn't see any cones wedged in my helmet. One time I went through the chicane on the weekend and it hit my helmet like this, like a dunce cap, but I didn't see this one in the race.
Well, they pulled this out of your car, and they want to give it to you to keep it, kind of like a winning football. This is your Australian trophy. And for more information on Victory Lane, let's go down to Jan Beekes.
Well, Scott Pruett had a great run today for second place, but Scott, you came here with the points lead, and now you've lost that. Jimmy Vasser first gets the pole, now he wins the race. Looked like you had a good car, but it was fuel that held you back?
Yeah, it was. First, hi to everybody back home. Yeah, it was fuel that held us back. We were struggling from the start. We knew that was going to be tough going in. The car was hooked up. The Firestone tires working great. The Patrick guys did a great job, but just down a little bit on fuel consumption, so we had to just, conserve.
Now, do you think that in Jimmy's case, maybe the Honda has better fuel economy, or was it his strategy to pit at different times? They had a much different window than you guys used.
Yeah, they did. Jimmy pretty well had me covered on horsepower. I think we had a little bit better car than he did, but, that's kind of one of those things that balances out. And about, 15, 20 laps into the race was about the time I started backpedaling, conserving fuel. So, I don't know. They seem to have us, but the Ford guys will go back to work. We'll see what we can do.
Scott Pruett's piling up the points. Let's go back to Jackaroo.
Well, Jan, a podium finish for this young man, Greg Moore. But, Greg, in the end, you were trying to chase down Scott Pruett.
Yeah, I was. I went a little bit too hard and used up my brakes towards the end there. And, I was catching him really hard, and then my brakes. I think that's what happened to Scott. He used his brakes up. But, I can't be any happier for the Polaris Foresight team. I think we could have won Rio, but now we got to put our first podium finish here, and then we'll go to Long Beach, where I think we can do real well, too.
Danny Sullivan said at the top of the show that it was real important that you gain points. You did here. Let's go up topside and take a look at some of those point standings.
All right, first of all, the final standings in the race as Jimmy Vasser takes the win, followed by Scott Pruett, Greg Moore, Mauricio Gugelmin, and Christian Fittipaldi. That's where the fight seemed to revolve the entire day, third, fourth, and fifth, as we look through the entire order here. And what does that do to the points? Well, That gives Jimmy Vasser a little firmer grip on the points battle, but it's still going to be a very tight fight. In the Nations Cup, it's the United States still running out in front, and in that Manufacturers Championship, Honda still looks very, very powerful. So looking at the end of the day, the quickest lap and the margin of victory, and the star of the race, of course, Greg Moore, who started back in 8th position and stayed with it. Had some brake problems toward the end, but finished in 3rd place. So the race has been run here. There are certainly more races upcoming as we take a look at those events upcoming in motorsports here on ABC Sports. So the ocean, the Pacific in this case, the Atlantic 2 weeks ago, now rolls somewhat peacefully ashore, though it's been churned up quite a bit here at Surfers Paradise earlier in the year. So the race is complete. Jimmy Vasser takes his 2nd win. We're glad that despite some situations in the pits, nobody was hurt as a result of the run here in Surfers. So the IndyCar battle continues, and they will go to the beaches immediately after this race, and we'll see you in 2 weeks in Long Beach, California. I'm Paul Page for Danny Sullivan, Jack Arute, and Jan Vikas. So long.